for questions towards the end. Like I said before, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to each of our panelists. This is going to be a great conversation. So let's kick it off with some intros. I want the panelists to introduce themselves, no particular order, just tell us your name, your role at Niantic, and what your role means. Like, what do you do at Niantic Labs?
I'll go first. My name is Nicholas. I go to Sac State. My major is artistic studio. I recently switched from last semester. So my type of, there's three I'm into, entertainment, gaming industries, or do 3D modeling like pure parts. I put everything together and present to the clients kind of way. I'm more into creativity. So I think I'm either game industries or entertainment industries. So I'm gonna get to that stuff. Or like into animation stuff like they do in Japanese style.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you so much. We're going to do intro with the panelists. We'll be here literally all day if we did the attendees, but thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. But we do want to limit the intros to just the panelists for now, as much as I want to get to know you guys. This is great. Thank you so much for sharing. I really do appreciate it. We want to make sure we make the most of this hour together. So let's kick it off with the panelist intro so you know who's talking to you today. Thank you for sharing.
Go first. Hi, everyone. I'm Coraly Rosario. I'm a senior UX designer at Niantic, specifically in the LA office. What is a UX designer? I deal with the experience of the game, like the flows, how screens take you from one point to the next, or the player's journey through different actions that they are taking in the game. I work very, very closely with game designers, and art, honestly, and engineering and everybody. Like UX kind of talks to all the disciplines. We're a bridge between cross-discipline. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Super quick, I'm Puerto Rican and I'm on the West Coast. But yeah, no, it's a pleasure to meet everyone.
I can go next. Hi, everybody. My name is Grace. I am a software engineer on the same team as Coraly in the LA office. My role is engineering. So I basically work a lot with designers and a lot with Coraly, actually. And then we kind of just, they tell us what they want created in the game. And then I go in to the engine and I create the whatever features they're asking of. And we write a lot of technical documentation to get knowledge sharing across, and that's pretty much my role. I do mostly client work, but I also do a little bit of server work as well. Yeah, that's me.
I can go next. Hello, everybody. My name is Martin Gonzalez. I might be one of the newer from the panel here at Niantic, and I'm an operations specialist. Basically what that means, well, in addition to operations specialist, I'm also a community manager. And so what that means is that I'm kind of the bridge between all of our users out playing our games, having that experience, and our engineering team. And so I'm the one, or one of the ones that you speak to when there's any type of issues going on, when it's your experience, giving feedback, and then I kind of translate that to our engineering, our product managers, who then work on finding solutions or improving it or taking your solutions. So yeah, it's a little bit about what I do. And yeah, happy to have you all here.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam or Sameeta. I'm also a UX designer like Coraly. And I particularly work on Pokemon Go. I'm based in the SF office. And I'm part of a couple of different teams, and I design mostly for things related to the player map, and then also for things combat related. So if any of you guys have played Pokemon Go and you know about raids and PvP, that's something that I work on. And then also just making the map have really fun interactions. Most recently, one of the features that I released was the NBT. It's like a leaderboard that happens after raids. So yeah, if any of you guys play Pokemon Go, let me know. I'm Team Valor. Nice to see you guys.
And Janelle, did you want to introduce yourself? If not, we can
yeah, sure. I'm kind of, oh my gosh, I have a washi tape on mine. Hi, I'm Janelle Villanueva. I am the IT procurement specialist. I help Shari with coordinating this panel. So I'll be kind of here behind the scenes. But I mostly deal with contract and purchasing softwares and pretty equipment for employees to use while they're in the office or at home. So hi, nice to meet you all. And I'll leave it to Shari to continue.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I had to give a shout out. You're a huge help in coordinating this, so thank you. Okay, so let's jump in. So in case you're here, you don't know exactly what Niantic does, I do want to start there. So this is going to be popcorn style. We don't have to go down the line, no particular order. If your heart leads you to answer, please do. But let's talk about what Niantic is. What do you do in the most simplest terms? And then how would you describe the industry or space? Because I know it's an interesting intersection. So let's start there.
I guess I could take this one, or to start off. Niantic is, I think, a cross between a game company and a tech company. I think we lean more towards tech nowadays, with studying like AR and how to mesh the real world with the virtual world. That's like one of the biggest research goals of Niantic. But we do also produce games. We have a lot of games in like the pipeline, and we also have some that are released already, like Pokemon Go is the flagship one, and then we also have Ingress and other games that are being produced. And so we do a little bit of both, but I think like for the most part, the biggest topic of research that our company is doing is AR and the metaverse and everything. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing. That was awesome. So I always like to start with these panels about the story, like the journey, like what led you here, right? Because I think a lot of misconception is that there's one path. And we all know, like my path is like all over the place. I had no idea I would be running a tech startup. And I really say that to say that, you know, your personality is just as important as your experience, is just as important as your skill. So this is the question I do want each of you to answer. Like, how did you end up where you are now? Like, what was your very first job? How was your passion born? Like, what led you here? So I want to show that they're all different types of paths, all different types of journeys, and it's unique to the person. So I do want each of you to briefly answer that. Like, how'd you get your start? Like, how did you end up here?
I can go first. So like I mentioned before, I'm originally from Puerto Rico. I was born and raised on the island. And in high school, I wanted to be working in games. I love drawing. I drew a lot of anime. And my parents were like, yeah, no, you're not going anywhere. So I went to a fine arts school in Old San Juan, and got a bachelor's degree in graphic design. And I worked in print for a really long time. My first job, I was actually doing like image correction for like 5 years. I was a product photographer for a bit. I was a teacher for a bit as well. At the same time, I was doing graphic design, freelance contract, all of it print, none of it was digital, like digital products. And eventually I decided, you know what, I'm gonna give it another try. And I really want to be in games. Like I play games a lot. It's kind of like a passion. I have this foundational knowledge. Can I use it somehow to work in video games? So I told my parents, hey, I'm leaving. And I went to California and I did a master's degree in game development specifically, but I spoke to the directors there. I'm like, hey, I have all this knowledge in graphic design. Can I apply it to like maybe UI UX in video games? So they kind of like cobbled something together for me, taking some like additional classes, graduated, and then the rest is like kind of history. Like I was contracting for a bit, then I got my first role as a junior designer at a startup, and I slowly just like worked mainly in mobile. Like everything I've worked on has been mostly mobile. And now I'm at Niantic. Just in case, it took me 2 tries to get into Niantic. That's okay. That's actually pretty common. It takes a while sometimes to get into jobs for a variety of reasons. But now I'm here. I love it. It's super fun. Who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Oh, you go in, man. Then I'll go next.
Awesome. So yeah, very much like Coraly, also took me 2 tries to get into Niantic. So my very first job was actually working in the fields, picking produce. My parents immigrated from Mexico, and so ever since I can remember, up until I left for college, I helped them in the summers, during winter breaks. And so that was my very first job. After that, I went to school to University of Pacific, where I got my bachelor's in sociology and then my master's in educational administration. And then I worked for universities and colleges for a couple years, and also in K-12 and working with high school students. After that, I met some folks who started working in the intersection of like tech and education, which is where I ended up next. And so I started working with Smash, the K4 Center, and some of the other organizations in the Bay Area, working and trying to get the global majority folks, low income, first generation, into the tech space. And so that's how I ended up getting to know Kyle, who actually recruited me into Niantic through his partner. And so, yeah, I've been at Niantic ever since. Actually, not ever since. That makes it sound like I've been here for a really long time. I've only been in Niantic for just over 6 months. So just left education very recently. But yeah, that's a little bit of my trajectory. It's a lot of fun, a lot of transferable skills that I was able to gain from education and sociology, a lot of questioning, right? And so as Grace mentioned, like in the metaverse, meta space, asking a lot of questions like, hey, we're building this space. How can we make sure not to duplicate the same isms that exist in the real world? As we're building maps, how are we making sure that, we're making sure that we're ethical and equitable about it? And so that's what I enjoy about it. I bring that kind of aspect to our team, making sure we're asking those questions. But yeah, it's a little bit about my journey.
I can go next. I also kind of came from education. I don't think in the same way that Martine did, but similarly, I went to school at UT in Texas. That's actually where I am now. I think can be with my family because of all the things that are going on right now. And I went to school for marketing and computer science. I'd always thought I was just going to go into business or become an engineer. But kind of towards the end of my college career, I just felt like it wasn't for me. And sometimes it takes that long to realize that maybe you're not on the right path. And yeah, unfortunately, those 4 years I was pursuing something I didn't want to do, but I was also tutoring pretty much the entire time that I was in college. And I really loved that. So right out of college, I joined a program called Teach for America. And then I went to teach math and computer science in Richmond, California, which is right outside of San Francisco. And I was a teacher for about 4.5 years. And I loved it. I grew a lot. I feel like I learned so much as a teacher, and I really enjoyed working with students. And I really miss that I'm not really doing something like that right now. But I got to a point where I was like, all right, I need a new challenge. And I tried really hard to break into tech. I was applying to a lot of jobs, never really got interviews. It was really hard because I didn't have any experience in tech. All of my experience was in education. And so how I ended up at Niantic is I joined an apprenticeship, which is similar to an internship. But usually it's for people who are out of education or on like a different path than someone who would get a traditional internship, maybe out of college. So I did that. It was like a year-long apprenticeship with an educational portion and then a portion where I was working at Niantic. And then after that, I transitioned to full-time. So it was a really windy path, I think, to end up where I am, but I'm really happy to be at Niantic. I'm really enjoying the work that I'm doing, and I feel really lucky to have been given that opportunity. So I'm always advocating that, like, if you have a non-traditional path, there are things that you can do, like apprenticeships, to find your way. And if you find a company that's willing to give you a chance, it's a really great opportunity from there out. Yeah, that's me.
So I guess for me, it's very kind of straightforward for me. I went to college for computer science in Santa Cruz, but my senior year, I realized that they have a game design program, and I didn't really want to be in engineering if it wasn't for games, because I think games, like making things, is more of the reason why I enjoy engineering, making products that can actually like end up in like players' hands. And so I ended up staying an extra year so I could finish out the game design, like engineering portion of college. And then so I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in game engineering. And from there, I was like, before I graduated, I was a little bit stressed out with, you know, obviously when you're about to graduate, you get stressed out about if you're going to be able to find a job. Like, I didn't do any internships in college or anything, and I didn't have much experience besides the projects that I worked on in college. But coming out of college, I like decided that I wanted to kind of take a break, and I wasn't really looking for jobs. I decided maybe 6 months down the line, I'll like start looking. But then on LinkedIn, a position for Niantic showed up, and this was like a month after I graduated, and I was like, you know what, like I don't really meet much of the qualifications, but I'll just shoot my shot. So I ended up applying. I got an interview, and then I thought I tanked the interview, and then they called me back. So I went back, and a long story short, I ended up getting the job, even though I wasn't really looking. And I like had just thought like, you know, maybe I'm just gonna, you know, try. And so my takeaway from that is, I mean, like that's how I ended up here. And now I've been at Niantic for over 2 years now. But my takeaway from that is like, even if you don't feel like you meet the qualifications for the job listing, like just take the chance, because I did not imagine that I would end up at a company like Niantic. And it's, you know, I feel like I was very lucky with the timing, but I also think, you know, like just going for the opportunities, like it goes a long way. So yeah, that's it. Mine's really short, but that's it.
Oh, thank you for sharing. I love that, the shoot your shot, because that's also how I got into the industry. I think I look at job listings as just a soft guideline, right? It's just a soft guideline, but the worst that can happen is they don't call you back. That's literally the worst that can happen. And it's okay. Like, you're still alive. It's all good. You know, you move on and you keep it moving and you stay persistent. So I love that. And I just want to piggyback off what you said about LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn, you're missing out on some great opportunities. So if you have a LinkedIn that you need to dust the cobwebs off and update, this is your sign to update your LinkedIn right here. This is a sign to get a LinkedIn, because a lot of people, it's not just for older people. It's becoming more social. It's becoming more collaborative. So you're really missing out on a lot of education, tools, resources, networking opportunities if you don't have a LinkedIn. Yes, Alexandra just updated yesterday. Be like Alexandra and update your LinkedIn. So I just, you know, shameless plug. Okay, so moving on. I want, you know, I know a lot of people, when they think about, you could be very intimidating breaking into these types of industries, right? Like, a lot of people don't know like where to start, like what is the starting point? And I love what Sameeta said about apprenticeships, but if you're, you know, you have a skill set and you're just kind of sitting on it, like, where do I begin? This is the two-part question. What is your advice on can they be doing right now to prepare for a career, you know, at Niantic or a space like Niantic? What are some tangible tips that they could be doing right now, or some resources that they can be tapping into if they are just stuck and they don't know how to start or prepare?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I can take the first jab at this one. I think professionally, I'm a little bit more introverted. And so what I recommend and what always helped me is just joining passive Slack groups. So like if you're a part of Tequeria, if you're a part of Out in Tech, like just joining and getting to know, like, what are people talking about? What are the jobs that they're sharing? On there, you can find channels of like, you know, interview prep, like things I hate about tech, things I love about tech. Like, there's just a plethora of information on those Slack channels that you can literally just kind of be a fly on the wall on. And just kind of like soak in so that you're getting ready and you're like knowing what you're getting yourself into. And there's tons of people on those channels that are willing to help. That was when I started interviewing for Niantic. The first time I was like, hey, I didn't make it, but what are your recommendations? Here's my resume. Here's like, my previous, and then I had people who were like, hey, you come from education, you have a lot of great transferable skills. Here's how you transition that and kind of code it into what you would want to hear in a tech company. Being a part of those is really important. And I think also like getting a head start. So I know a lot of my friends are like, oh, I just graduated, I'm just gonna start job searching. And so I know it can be really hard being in your senior year or being overwhelmed by school. But for me, it was always like, I'm gonna start job searching my last semester, just so that I can like get a head start on that. If you're in the Bay Area, not sure if any of you are, there's tons of resources out there as well. So the Cape War Center's Talent Network provides some of those apprenticeships. There's tons and tons of resources. So I would definitely look into those. And then joining potentially like just like startup weekends, hackathons. Those are really fun ways to network and like just experiment and have fun. And I will stop talking.
I'm throwing a bunch of links into chat. So as soon as I'm done, I'm going to throw some more. Apart from what Martin said about joining like different Slack channels and different Discords, one of the things that people struggle with is like, I don't have like the work to show for it. Especially like if you're trying to get into games specifically, sometimes it could be a little tricky. So my recommendation and what I did, when I started as freelance contract, I also worked in adjacent fields. So like one of my first jobs after I graduated was working on a platform that was for surveyors, and it involved like maps, and it involved both a website and a mobile app. It has absolutely nothing to do with games, but that experience did lend itself really, really well to some of the stuff that I do with Niantic. If you want, AR kind of experience, look for startups, look for companies that are experimenting, doing a lot of R&D in healthcare, in film, in other industries that aren't necessarily game related, but a lot of the skills that you learn there and a lot of the work you do there do lend itself really, really well to what you would do in like a game company. The other thing I recommend, especially if you want to get into games, download Unity, download Unreal, just play around with it. Like you don't have to, yes, YouTube has a bunch of tutorials. You can totally like create a match 3 game super quick if you just want to like understand how the program works. But download like any sort of engine and just get your hands dirty with how things work. Because for example, Grace and I, we work very, very closely together. I don't program, but because I know how Unity works and I know the limits that it has and the things that we can do, I can speak her language as a programmer, and I can explain what it is that I'm looking for. So it's like a really good soft skill to have, and you can start developing that isn't like literally technical. Apart from that, networking is really important in our industry. I know right now we aren't really doing very many like on-site conventions. GDC is around the corner. If you're in San Francisco, go for it. Just make sure that you follow their guidelines. But networking, our industry is huge, but it's also tiny. Like we all kind of know each other. So showing yourself and presenting yourself to other people, saying like, hey, I'm here, I exist, is super, super beneficial and helpful. And maybe you won't get it immediately, but they'll remember you. Like, oh yeah, I know some like 3D modelers that I met during GDC or met during like, whatever. I have their business card, like, and they can, share it with a recruiter or something. Those are some quick tips. I will continue posting links in chat.
Piggybacking off of what Coraly said, I think my biggest advice, especially for engineering, is to build your portfolio. Like your portfolio is so important, especially if you don't have job experience and if you don't have any prior internship experience or anything like that. The recruiter or the interviewer is going to want to see what work you've done like on the side, and it shows the skill sets like overall that you would have as a game developer or any kind of engineer actually. And like more so than them just looking at the paper and seeing, oh, they know C#, oh, they know Java, like things like that. They'd want to see, oh, they've applied this knowledge like on their own, outside of any kind of like job field or anything like that. And so I'd say if you don't have prior job experience, or if you're not in an internship or anything, like work on the side, like make a game for fun, like show the recruiter what you can do without like any experience or anything like that. And that's kind of how I got my job at Niantic. Like I didn't have any internship or prior job experience, but I did have a large portfolio of games that I've worked on the side, and that's going to go a long way. So that's one thing that I really highly recommend. And also practice for technical interviews. Go on leetcode.com. I'll put the link in if you guys don't know it. But there's a lot of practice problems that interviewers will commonly ask, and they have a lot of questions like, oh, these are interview questions that Google has done in the past, and these are interview questions that Facebook has done in the past. And if you just practice all of those questions and know your algorithms and everything, yeah, you really need to prepare for the tech interviews.
This is so good. There's so many great resources in the chat, and we're only midway through the conversation. So make sure that you're either saving the chat at the end or grabbing these free resources. These are the gems, the knowledge, right? Because like I said earlier, there's all different types of paths, and a lot of these paths don't always include the traditional degree route, right? It's networking, who you know, skill set, all the things, organizations, clubs, those all matter. So to that point, in this space, like I said before, there's not, you know, our industry is changing, like even in entertainment, it's just not all about, you know, some particular roles you need a specific training, but how important is skill versus experience versus formal education? Because they're all very important. And I think a lot of people feel like, well, if I didn't go to college or if I don't have this particular training, then I'm just not gonna pursue this job. That's not always the case. So can we talk a little bit about the importance of skill set versus personality versus formal training? Do you need formal training for these jobs? Is that an absolute requirement? I do want to speak to that for a little bit.
I'll take a jab at that. I think it really depends on the role that you're interested in, like what type of background you need. A lot of companies, unfortunately, yeah, they're looking for that degree on paper, at least for the roles that they're advertising just on job boards and stuff like that. But if you don't have that, like I said, like apprenticeships are a really great option for people who don't have that type of background. A couple other people who were in my apprenticeship program who also joined full-time did not have a degree, did not go to college, but used the apprenticeship as itself as a means to prove themselves in the field. And that's the thing, like with these types of programs or things like boot camps, you gain the experience as well as something that you can actually show for it and show to employers at the same time. And those resources are just as useful for a lot of things that you may want to apply for.
I think it's like a good mix of all of them. Like I think it also depends on like knowing like the role, like understanding the role and understanding like what they might be looking for in that role. Like, but I don't think formal education is like the #1 priority when you're applying for jobs. I have a friend who went to school for music, got a degree in music, and he works as a software engineer at Discord now because he worked on bots, like Discord bots, all throughout summer. He didn't go to coding boot camp or anything like that, but then he saw an opportunity at Discord where like the role was literally to manage their bot API, and he because he like knew so much about it, like he got the job. And so it's not necessarily about the formal education all the time. I think it's just understanding like the role and like where you could fit into that role, and then selling yourself to that role, like to the recruiter.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much. So at Niantic particularly, like if someone's on this call and they're like, I just wonder what types of entry level roles does Niantic have? Like if they were to look or wanted to maybe potentially apply to a role at Niantic, what would be some examples of entry level roles and what do they entail? Or is that a thing?
Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but like I could take this question
No, talk.
I entered Niantic as an entry-level software engineer. I was an associate software engineer when I first started. And a lot of that entails just picking up tasks that will help you get to know the project better, the project base. And because most of Niantic is project-based, at least like with the game teams, if you were to go into like an entry-level position, I think it would look a lot more similar to what I was doing, where they'll just give you, they'll start you off with smaller tasks to help you get to understand the project base better. And then the more that you work in the project and the more you understand the product that you're working on, the more responsibility they'll start giving you. And you just kind of just build on that until you work your way up to a higher position. But we do tend to, I've seen entry-level job listings like listed for Niantic. I'm not sure outside of engineering because I'm mostly just focused on like the engineering stuff. But yeah, if you were to be hired as an entry level, I think they would definitely like, they also provide like mentorship programs. So they assign like a mentor to you when you first start so that you're not completely lost when you first start. And then they'll kind of, that mentor is there to answer any questions you have about the company or the project that you're working on, and you're not completely left alone and like thrown into the deep end. So it's pretty great.
I know Niantic does have internships every summer, and they do work with some other companies to like bring in interns. One of the other people that I know, the other UX designers, like literally he got a full-time job at Niantic because of an internship. I think it was with Greenhouse or something, right, Martin? So there are internship opportunities. Yeah, Polly. But like those opportunities are like rare, or there's just very few. Like this summer, we just had 4, for example. And I know there's discussions about like maybe doing more. Aside from that, we do have junior level or associate level like job postings once in a while. And usually what we look at is, what does your portfolio look like? What kind of work have you been doing? Do you meet like the minimal requirements of the role? If you do, that's cool. Like we just hired someone not too long ago on our team, and they're junior level, and it's just, we need them to help us with content and implementing the content, and that's it. But like Grace said, it's not that you're just going to be thrown into the deep end of the pool. Usually like we partner you up with somebody that's going to mentor you up, show you how to just generally do things. Apprenticeship, I don't remember seeing anything like that at Niantic specifically, but it doesn't mean other companies don't do it. I recently shared on Twitter an apprenticeship with another company. I think they're in like Philly. And I can share that in the links in a minute. And they help you with like tuition, they pay you. It's like a 3-year apprenticeship. So they exist. You just have to keep like your eye out for it. Other than that, let me think. The only other thing I can think of is if you can't find an apprenticeship or an internship, but you really want to try to get like that experience, game jams are really good for just like learning how to work with other people. And at the end of it, coming up with like a product or a game or something to show for it. And I love looking at game jam portfolios or work that's been done. And that's me.
Thank you. I just want to piggyback really quick. If you're on this call and you're not super familiar with apprenticeships, we should have a lot more of them, honestly, if we're being honest in this industry. So like I think Coraly said, you have to do the work to find them, unfortunately, but it is a great alternative. Not only is it a great experience, but also a great alternative to college, or if you don't have little to no experience for something that you're applying for. It's generally longer than an internship. Internships are generally just a few months, whereas an apprenticeship could be a year or 2 years, and it's generally rotational. So you're coming on board, they're paying you, and you're rotating through departments, and with the potential of getting hired full-time at the end. So I do want to stress that that's very different from an internship. It's like a job basically, but it's learning like on the job training. So you're learning, you usually get a mentor, it's rotational, so you can get a feel for all different departments within the ecosystem or a company, and then you're getting paid while you're working, while you're learning. So I do want to stress the difference in that. It's very valuable, but unfortunately you do have to do a little bit of work and intention to find these apprenticeships. And panelists, if you have resources or links that you can drop in the chat where you can find these apprenticeships, that would be helpful. But I do want to stress that that's an up and coming thing. A lot of companies are building more apprenticeship programs. A lot of government like funded state agencies are trying to put that at the forefront. So I think with a little work and intention, you'll be able to find them. But it's a great opportunity to get that on the job training that you wouldn't get anywhere else. I do want to stress that. So I do want to talk about your favorite projects. Do you have a favorite project that you've worked on? Why was it your favorite project? Just to give people the example of the scope of work that Niantic does. If you could talk just briefly about your favorite project and why you loved it so much.
Coraly and I are working on a undisclosed project currently.
We're not allowed to talk about it.
We're under an NDA, so we can't
So
really,
if the others can talk, yeah.
Yeah.
I know, I'm trying to think of one that we have public so far. Our ambassadors program. Okay, so one of the projects that I got to work on, or I'm still working on, is our ambassadors program. And so we have a couple ambassador programs at Niantic. And basically what that means is that we take on a group of our like super experienced users, like entry-level users. So for my product, I work on Wayfair. And so that is one of our platforms where let's say you play Pokemon Go or you play Ingress, you can help build out like your own map and experience when you're playing the games. And so you can go nominate, something super cool in your neighborhood that you want to be a Pokestop or a gym or a portal. And so I work on that platform. And so what we did is we got a bunch of our global users. So currently we just extended invitations. And so we're super excited to bring them on board. But now I get to work with people in India, in Australia, in Mexico, Panama, Indonesia, to really help build our product. And so I'm a people person, I'm in education, so makes sense. So being able to like learn and survey, like, hey, what do you really love? What do you not love so much? To help build our product, I think is just a super cool experience. And now like there's people all around the world who are like, helping us and we get to chat with. And so that's probably been one of my favorite ones so far.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to backtrack just a little bit because I wanted to ask this and I completely forgot in full transparency. And I'm also asking for myself because I'm curious, but does Niantic have any like non-technical roles? Let's say you're just interested in the industry as a whole, but maybe you're not an engineer or you're not technical. Do you guys have roles or departments that aren't technical? Maybe they're creative or admin or support. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because maybe there's someone here who loves the company, is interested in gaming and tech, but they're not technical.
So hopefully nobody's recording this, but I'm not a gamer. I was never a gamer. My parents thought gaming was terrible, and so we never got it. And even into college, like I think college was the first time I ever played an actual video game. And so now I'm working at like this place that kind of builds games. And so yes, our entire operations team, part of our people team, like there are non-technical jobs, and I know non-technical can be a bit of a like conflicting word for some folks because it's very it's not asset based, but we do have a lot of roles where we support the engineers, where we support the company. So if you want to be in finance, if you want to be if you're really good at building systems and processes, like come join our ops team. If you're really good at like talking to other people, you're like super into all these gamings, come become a community manager. So those are all roles that don't require like knowledge of how to code, how to build, a software. So every single tech company that I know folks, like they all have that aspect to their companies as well. Because yeah, it can't all just be engineers. It can't all just be UX designers. It can't all just be, you know, app builders. There's so much more to it than that exists in the tech space.
Just like every other company out there, it's a business. You need lawyers, you need accounting, payroll, office admins. Janelle, she was Janelle, like what was
I
your
was the
role?
workplace experience specialist.
Exactly. So she just made our lives like so amazing, you know, and you don't need like full-on technical skills for that. If you do want to move like maybe a little bit more into like interfacing with game teams, producers are really good. Like our producer, I don't think we'd survive without her. Like we love her so much. And she doesn't code. She just works in spreadsheets all day. That's all she does, and herds cats. Us being the cats. But aside from like in company, like development, working with game side of things, you also have folks that like do event coordination. Like, for example, Niantic, we have people that go out to do the community days or go out to put together like these big, you know, stages and stuff. Same thing with esports. Like you have people that have to put these things together and plan and coordinate all of this. They don't work directly in games, but it's games adjacent. And that experience does apply later on if you do want to move in games. Yeah, there's everything that you would think any other company needs. We need it too.
Thank you for sharing that. Last question before we get to the attendees' questions. What are you most excited about the future of this industry, and where is this industry headed? Because I know things are changing on the hour in this industry. So what are you personally most excited about, and where is this industry headed?
I think like the pandemic especially brought out a lot of like the strength of the games industry. Like it's a business that like has not tanked, and it's actually been super successful since everyone's been indoors playing games and everything. I think games are always something that's going to be like what people want, and it's like for me, I really believe in like the video game industry. I think like people are doing like a ton of like, I mean, I think like especially like with Niantic, because we're not just a games company, but we're a tech and research company. Like we're trying to shape the future of games. We're trying to shape how people play games, and how they see it in the real world. Like we're not trying to get people to like stay indoors cooped up, but you know, like go out and explore. Like we're using our games to get people to see different landmarks and find different things. And so I think like I'm excited personally for the direction that Niantic is heading in, and you know, with the whole emergence of the metaverse and everything, and all the companies kind of like racing to create their version of the metaverse. Like I think we're at a really good position, and it's really exciting to see how much more we can connect the virtual world with the real world, which is super exciting to me.
Okay, well, let's get some questions. So listen, private message me directly with your questions. We want to be as efficient as possible these last 15, 20 minutes. So private message me with your question and I will ask it for you just so I can get through as many as possible. So if you have a question, private message me, Shari Holly on the screen, and we'll get to some questions. Okay, let's see. And also, this is just your friendly reminder to save the chat, because Coraly is the link queen. Wow. Okay, thank you, Coraly.
I'm in a lot of communities because of the DEI work that I do. So I'm always just talking to a bunch of different people and coordinating that side, just in case. Outside of my day job, I'm also like co-lead of Nianticos, which is our Latin American ERG, employee resource group, that's what it means. And I'm also like vice president of a Puerto Rican initiative. So like, I'm just all over the place. And that's why like all these links are literally like all the communities that I'm a part of. And I'm still like finding more that I forgot, but yeah.
Amazing, thank you. They're all amazing. I'm gonna save some, so make sure you save the chat. Okay, the questions are filing in. I'm trying to get through as many as possible. Okay, first question. What programming languages are a must know for those looking to get a job in engineering? What languages do you usually work in?
I think there's not one answer fits all kind of language. It really depends on the company and what they use. So I mean, Niantic uses C# and Java like for game development. And I think a lot of game development teams are either going to use C# or C++ to some degree. But it like really depends on the company. And I think something you'll realize as you're applying for more jobs is that they don't necessarily always care about you knowing the programming language itself. It's more of how like knowing how to use that, like the fundamental knowledge that you have about coding. So like in interviews, they'll ask you like to solve the algorithmic problems in the language that you're most comfortable in, because they're not like looking to see if you know a specific language or not. They're looking to see your thought process and how you solve problems. So it's not necessarily like one language is the best, but it's more of like how well you can use that language as a tool to solve these problems that they're looking for.
Thank you, Grace. Okay, next question. I recently created an original board game presentation and wondered if a board game can be transitioned into a digital online game. Yes.
Yes, you can. So a really good example is Wingspan. So Wingspan started as a board game, won a ton of awards, and they went ahead and actually ported it to Switch and to Steam, and it plays amazing. And you can play with other people online and everything. You take your turns. But yes, long story short, you totally can go ahead. Card games, board games, whatever physical type of game that you're thinking can totally one-to-one or almost one-to-one be matched to digital product.
Thank you, Coraly. Next question. Are there any career opportunities for music sound designers at Niantic, specifically entry level for fresh graduates?
I'm not sure about Niantic specifically, because like I don't know about other game teams. I know our game team is outsourcing sound from a different company or third party. We don't do the sound engineering internally. But I do know that every game needs sound engineering in some capacity. Every game needs it's a really important part of game development, and it's something that you start early on in the process. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of entry level sound engineering like job listings out there, because it is something that is decided like kind of early in the process because it grows along with the game. So I don't think Niantic itself has a lot of entry level positions for sound and music, but I definitely not be afraid to look otherwise, because so many games need sound engineering.
Thank you so much, Grace. Next question asks, have any of you produced your own projects? If so, are there any that you worked on that you're proud of in particular?
That's a good question. Sorry, I feel like I'm answering all of these. But I in college I did make one game that I still to this day think is what got me the job at Niantic, is a board game, like a physical board game, but it has a mobile app component to it. So you play the game, but then every time you land on a space, you scan it, and then in the phone, the phone tells you everything, like how many spaces to move, like what happens to other players during the game, what happens to you when you landed on that space. And it was a really fun game that actually won me a couple awards in college and stuff. And so that's something that I'm really proud of, because that's what started my whole love and passion for wanting to connect the virtual world with the real world. I love the idea of meshing the physical world with things that we do on digital. And so yeah, I really love board games and card games and things like that. And so that was the biggest project that I've worked on. Yeah, that's a good question. It's fun.
Okay. What is the best way to prepare for technical interviews?
I guess that's me again. Technical interviews, I would definitely say brush up on your knowledge of data structures and algorithms and, you know, big O notation. Everything you've learned in college, if you went to college for engineering, like everything you've learned in class, study that. You have to know like how object-oriented programming works, especially for game development. Object-oriented programming is like, it's a must. And like I said, go on LeetCode. That website has so many different practice problems, and like just go through like the easy and medium difficulty problems and try to get through as many as possible, because a lot of technical interviewers are going to be asking you like very generic, like algorithmic, like problem solving questions. And then also in the technical interview, don't be afraid if you can't get the answer. Start off by explaining the entire thought process, like explain and speak out loud for everything that you're writing or thinking or doing, because the whole point of a technical interview isn't necessarily for you to get the correct answer. It's so that the interviewer can tell like what your thought process is during, and they want to know how you go about solving problems, and like if you're good at problem solving, and how well you work under pressure. Like practice whiteboarding, practice writing code that you can't compile, like that's not in a code editor, like practice like speaking out loud like during your thought process. Like all of that is really important for technical interviews. So make sure that, yeah, and like understand that they're not trying to get you to say the correct answer. Like a lot of the times they won't really care if your code doesn't compile because you're not writing in a code editor. They just care more about like what you're like, how you solve problems and your approach to them.
Plus one on the UX side of things, and Sameeta, feel free to like jump in on this. We often do like whiteboarding exercises during like the interview process, and it's really like, it never is to find like a result or a solution. It's really for us to see how you think, how you approach problem solving. Are you asking questions to get context? How are you using that information? Like all of that, like what we really focus on is how you think and how you problem solve. We don't actually care about your final answer whatsoever, if you like actually solved it or not, because at the end of the day, when you are working on a team and working on the actual thing, there are so many things out of our control that's going to affect what the final result is, that it doesn't even matter. So in your portfolio, in those interviews, if you can communicate and talk to what you're thinking in your head and how you're approaching everything, that's all that matters. In chat, I linked the LeetCode website, and Designer Size is actually like a really, really cool site for you to just practice whiteboarding.
The link queen, guys, I'm telling you. Thank you, Coraly. And I just want to piggyback, because Grace put in the chat about asking questions. I always say this in all of my like resume interview workshops. The questions portion of the interview is not just for protocol. It's really for you to ask questions that you genuinely want to know the answer to, because you know, this is a job. Any job is commitment. So why wouldn't you ask questions so you can make sure that you're getting an accurate picture of what the role calls for, what the company culture is like. So honestly, you should never not have any questions. That's what I say. You should always, always, always have questions. You should never say, no, I don't have any questions. Okay, especially with the company at Niantic, like really think about why you want to work there. Like what cool, if you have questions about the projects or the work, like these types of questions that you're asking, you can that's totally appropriate to ask during the interview. So I just wanted to stress that. You're gonna remember my face. You should always have questions. Never say you don't have any questions, okay? And write them down. So I got a few questions about portfolios. So I'm gonna try and mesh all of these questions together, but I guess in the most simplest terms, what does a great portfolio entail? What does it look like? What are the components of a solid, strong portfolio?
I would say try to have a website that you could link to the recruiter, like display all the things that you, if you're a designer, like have a one-stop shop so people could see exactly like what you've worked on, what you did, or if you like did a large project, what you contributed to that piece. And if you're an engineer, linking your Git repository so they could see like your code, that would be good. But I would definitely say like, even if it's like Squarespace or like Wix or something, like create a website with like a free domain, and then like just link it in your LinkedIn or your resume, and in your application, so that they could, like, I think a lot of like games industry, like games companies will ask you to provide like a website or something. And if you put the website in, then they'll be able to see like all the work that you do, and definitely like detail out what you've contributed to whatever you've listed on the website.
And make sure it's complete. I know we're a work in progress. I totally get it, but just make sure if you're going out for a job that they actually have work to see, and that it's not just coming soon, work in progress. I see that a lot. And just make sure it's fleshed out as it possibly can be, to Grace's point. Because I mean, literally that's kind of like your resume. It's complementary to your resume. So just wanted to stress that. I also-
Sorry, Shari. I wanted to add, for UX and game design, one thing that I really like to see is a build. Like, can I just play your game or your prototype or something? Can I just see what it is that you put together? Or if it's out, can I download it somewhere? Having that really shows me like, not only your process, like reading it through the website, your portfolio, but also kind of the end result. And again, it's okay if like, you didn't reach like a total final answer that's like perfect or whatever. That's not really what I'm looking at. I just want to see how you put it together.
Next question. How would you describe the company culture at Niantic? What's it like working at Niantic?
Yeah, so I guess I can take a jab at it from probably the newest, but then I'll leave it to somebody else who's been there for longer. So I was actually super surprised. When I first joined, it was probably one of the smoothest onboardings I've ever had, and also probably the most helpful team. Like, I was shocked. I've come from places that are just like, semi-toxic, very toxic. Like, it's always a competition, and nobody wants to help you, and like asking your supervisor these questions, which you feel like, oh my gosh, I should know this. They're like, no, like, we want you to know this, and like, we want you to ask the questions. And so on my team, like every time I've had a question, every time I've been just curious, every time I've wanted to try something new, they're just like super enthusiastic about it, and like, oh, I don't know that answer, but you should talk to X, Y, and Z. Or like, oh yeah, that's really cool, let's explore it. We just launched a new Twitter account, and we're exploring with like engagement with the community on that. And they're just like super excited and like, oh, this is really cool, let's continue in this. So as far as like the environment and all that stuff, I think it's like super fun, super great. I love meeting like even people from like different offices. But yeah, everybody's been super friendly so far. I'll give you all an update in a year.
Thank you, Martin. Next question, is quality control testing / bug testing in the gaming industry a solid job?
Yes. The QA engineers are part of all of our teams, are so important to the process. Especially like we talk a lot about something called like tech debt when we release features and then decide sometime down the line we're going to come and fix all the problems that came with this new feature. And when we accumulate a lot of debt like that, it's the QA engineers that are one that try to like reel us back in and put things back together. And we don't release a feature without it going through a ton of testing and quality assurance to get to a point where we can give it into everybody's hands. So yes, it's a huge field. We love QA when we absolutely need them.
Thank you so much, Sam. next question. As engineers, how often do you interact with 3D artists? What software are they using to create animations and models?
I think it depends on your role on the team as an engineer. Like the features that I'm working on, I don't really interact with 3D artists at all, but I do know there are some engineers that are working on like our cinematic system. And so they do work with like our 3D artists to make sure that, you know, everything that the artists need in order to like import the assets and to get them looking correct in like the game. It goes through the engineer as well. I mean, they work together like really closely. And so like, yeah, like they have a pretty close relationship. It depends on like what kind of engineer you are and what feature you're working on. But yeah, we do have engineers that work with the 3D artists.
I also want to highlight a role that not many people ever think of. It's tech art. Tech artists are like, oh my God, freaking unicorns. I love them. So a tech artist is literally a combination of like a front end or some sort of like engineer with an artist. And a lot of the stuff that they do is like not only animations, but also VFX and implementation of certain art assets, but getting them to work properly. And if you go into tech art, you are going to be highly sought after. That's one thing I'm just going to throw out there. But yeah, other than that, like 3D artists just work alongside an engineer and making sure that like they can actually implement it correctly and it actually looks good, like what Grace said, all +1.
Thank you. Okay, a couple more questions. Okay, this one says, how would you explain why metaverse is important to know in game development to the person who does not have any metaverse experience? For the first time metaverse experience, what product would you recommend me to try? Should I read that again? It's kind of lengthy. Okay, how would you explain why metaverse is important to know in game development to the person who does not have any metaverse experience? That's one question. Second question is, for the first time metaverse experience, what product would you recommend me to try?
I think that's a hard question to answer just because right now, in a lot of the sense of the word, metaverse is still this kind of overarching concept. I don't think any company has really taken it to fruition all the way. So knowing what it is really important, and knowing that, you know, companies are working in that direction is really important. But saying that you have experience in the metaverse, I don't think that's as important to have. But yeah, like companies like Niantic and Facebook obviously are working in that direction, and things that are in that direction are things like virtual reality and augmented reality. Those are going to be really big key points of what the metaverse ends up becoming. So if you want to learn more about those fields, that's a good place to start.
Yeah, the metaverse right now, I mean, games has been kind of like doing the metaverse for a very long time. You know, you have your World of Warcraft and all of this stuff, which it's, and final, like a lot of the Final Fantasies that are online. The thing with the metaverse is that you are talking about like having all of these worlds combined so that you can cross between them. And that's where, at least on the game design side, it's a little bit tricky because an asset in one game can't really be ported right now, at least, to another game without it breaking. Because the way that we build it, maybe something in one of Niantic's games, is so different from like something like Horizon, you know. So I mean, it's good to look at things. Roblox right now is kind of like, on the game side, kind of like experimenting a lot with like that metaverse concept, but it's still self-contained. And I think everything right now is still pretty self-contained. There's nothing bridging anything yet. So it's okay to think about it. It's okay to be a thought leader in it, but we're still not there.
Okay, last question. This person asked, should I put volunteer beta testing that I've done for game devs on my resume?
I think like if that's the role, like, or if it relates to the role you're applying for, then yes, definitely put that down if you've had any experience with the role. But I'd say like the biggest thing when building your resume is make sure that your resume is written tailored to the job that you're applying for. You shouldn't have just one resume. You should have a different resume that's specific to each job that you apply for. Even if you don't have much experience, make sure that like the experience that you do have listed in like the key points underneath it, like it's written for the role that you're applying for. That way, like the recruiter is more like, oh, hey, like, you know, they have experience with this and they've done this. And I think that would be helpful for our project or our team. Like, that's what you're really looking for. So yeah, it depends on the role you're applying for. But if it relates, then definitely put the experience down. Yeah.
No mass sending. No mass sending, guys. I want to repeat that, okay? So you shouldn't have one resume just blasting out to everybody. No, okay? Take the time to tailor your resume to the job, give it some tender love and care, workshop it. I know it's tedious, but you have to do it. You're trying to get a job, okay? This is your livelihood. So make sure you're taking the time to workshop your resume, be very intentional and make sure, I mean, the roles are telling you what they're looking for. Literally, you have a job listing where they're telling you exactly what they're looking for. So literally do a side by side and just make sure that if you have that experience that's reflected in your resume. I can't stress that enough. If you're mass sending and wondering why you're not getting callbacks, it's probably why, okay? So make sure I love that point. And I would stress it to the end of my days. Make sure that sorry, it's a car. Make sure that you're workshopping your resume. So thank you so much for sharing that point. Did you have a point, Coraly?
Yes, I had two. So one, I know it's very tempting to go on LinkedIn and just mass send messages like, hey, can you refer me for this job to people that are on teams? Please don't do that. Because one, I don't know you. We have never spoken. We have never met. So I can't really vouch for you if I don't know you. Two, it's kind of rude to just ask for a job out of the blue if I don't know you as well. What I do recommend, and keep in consideration that not everyone has the time to do this, but at least the ones who like reach out to me that I respond to and actually take time, go into detail about like, hey, this is where I'm at. I saw this job posting. I really want to get an understanding of like what it is that you're looking for or what Niantic is looking for. Can I just like talk to you for 15 minutes and maybe give me some pointers to see if like my resume is good or my portfolio is good or anything's missing? Like taking the time to invest into establishing a relationship with someone is so important versus just like, give me a job. So if you can just take that time to do that and be genuine about it as well. Don't just like Shari said, like, don't just mass send emails like that. Be very intentional in what it is that you're sending. Two, on your resume, keep in mind that recruiters and hiring managers are looking at like hundreds of resumes a week, sometimes a day. If you can somehow make it so that your resume stands out in what it is that you're describing in your experience, that's gonna like bump you up. And I'm going to put a formula that I like using into chat, but basically highlight what you accomplished in that role or in that project versus what you are and what you did. And again, I'll put the formula in a minute there, but like showing that I added value to this thing and what that value was and how you measure it. Recruiters love that stuff. They just like immediately like, oh my God, yes, let's get like this person in. So think about it that way. Think about like, you know, if it's the first time you're doing user research and the company has never done user research before, you were the first one to establish that process. That is an accomplishment. And because of that, you know, your features improved and everything just started working so much better. And the team felt more aligned because you were able to establish a user testing process. But yes, that is like my suggestion.
Yes, drop that formula in the chat. And also before we wrap, after she does drop that link, don't forget to say the chat for the 87th time, because it's such great stuff. This is such an incredible conversation. I'm just so thankful to be in the space where I'm able to bring such brilliant minds and voices together for students and alum and attendees if you're out there. Thank you so much to our panelists for taking the time and energy. We need more people taking the time and energy and sharing their stories. So very appreciative for you taking that time. Thank you to everyone who attended and invested in your skill set and your future by attending today and listening and staying on. Thank you so much. We do this once every 3 weeks, I think, with Haley. Once every 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We want to make sure that we're a viable resource for you. So make sure that you follow pipelines.pro. Follow us on Instagram at Pipelines Pro. Follow the CSUEA, which is a viable resource for students and alum to connect to the industry. We're here for you. Connect with us. Stay up to date. We'll be doing more events like this. And I just want to say a huge thank you to our panelists again. Happy Friday. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you all.